Nobody saw it coming. Not at 1:00 a.m. Not on a quiet street in Georgia. And definitely not with King Harris dressed like that. Because what happened that night wasn't just another celebrity run-in with the law. It was a turning point. The exact moment everything flipped upside down. 1 second, King was trying to defend his family's name, and the next, he became the internet's favorite punchline. And the worst part, someone had been waiting for a moment like this. Watching, calculating. 50 Cent. If you know anything about him, you already understand. This isn't just a rapper. This is someone who has mastered the art of public humiliation. He doesn't just respond to drama, he turns it into spectacle. Careers have been bruised, reputations shattered, all from a single well-timed post. So when news broke that King Harris had been arrested, wearing a full Pikachu onesie, police lights flashing, tension in the air, it wasn't just shocking. It was perfect. Perfect timing. Perfect optics. Perfect ammunition. And 50 Cent didn't hesitate. Because this wasn't random. This wasn't just bad luck. This was the kind of moment that drops right into the hands of someone who knows exactly how to use it. But to really understand why this hit so hard, you have to rewind. Way back. Because this wasn't just about one arrest. This was years in the making. A slow-burning collision between two completely different worlds that were always bound to explode. On one side you have T.I., a self-made icon. A man who built his name from the ground up, survived the ups and downs of the industry, and still managed to command respect. He's seen the worst of the spotlight and came out standing. On the other side, 50 Cent. Not just an artist, but a strategist. Someone who treats conflict like chess, always thinking 3 moves ahead. He doesn't just react. He studies people, waits for weaknesses, and when the timing is right, he strikes. For years, the tension between them simmered quietly. Nothing too loud at first. A few subtle jabs, side comments in interviews, moments where something felt off, even if nobody said it outright. It was the kind of quiet friction that people noticed but couldn't fully explain. Until things escalated. And oddly enough, it started with something that should have brought them together, a versus battle. What should have been a celebration of 2 legendary careers quickly turned into something else entirely. T.I. floated the idea publicly. Fans got excited. The internet lit up with debates, predictions, anticipation. But then silence. 50 Cent didn't jump in. He didn't entertain it, didn't hype it, didn't even acknowledge it the way people expected. He dodged it. And that's when everything shifted. Because to T.I., that wasn't just a missed opportunity, it felt like disrespect. And once that word enters the equation, everything changes. Now it wasn't about music anymore. It was about pride. Legacy, control, and that's when 50 Cent changed the rules of the game. Instead of going head-to-head in a traditional sense, he moved the battle somewhere else, social media, a place where narratives are shaped instantly and perception can be flipped in seconds. But here's where it got messy. He didn't go directly at T.I. He went around him. Family. What started as subtle posts quickly turned into direct shots. Memes began circulating. Jokes turned sharper. And before long, Tiny Harris found herself pulled into a situation she never asked for. The internet noticed immediately. Fans picked sides. Some laughed. Some defended. Some just watched as things spiraled further than anyone expected. And the Harris family, they weren't going to ignore it. But instead of T.I. stepping in and shutting it down completely, something else happened. Someone else stepped forward. King Harris. Now, this wasn't just some random reaction. King had been watching everything unfold in real time, seeing his family dragged, his mother disrespected, his father mocked across platforms by someone known for taking things too far. And eventually, it got to him. Because instead of staying quiet, he fired back. And not lightly. He went straight at 50 Cent. No hesitation, no filter, calling him out publicly, digging into old controversies, throwing accusations, bringing up things most people wouldn't dare mention. For a moment, it looked bold. Fearless even. Some fans applauded him, said he was standing up for his family, said he had heart. But what they didn't realize was that he had just stepped into a game he didn't fully understand. Because 50 Cent doesn't operate on emotion. He doesn't rush. He doesn't panic. And he definitely doesn't lose control. He waits. And when the moment is right, he lets everything unfold on its own. Which brings us back to that night. The arrest. Because suddenly, everything King had been trying to prove, strength, defiance, control, got overshadowed by one image. A viral, unforgettable image. And just like that, the narrative flipped. It didn't matter what he said before. It didn't matter what he was trying to defend. The internet had already decided what this moment meant. And 50 Cent. He didn't need to say much. That's the part people miss. The real power isn't always in what you say, it's in knowing when to say it, or when to let the moment speak for itself. Because by the time he reacted, the damage was already done. The jokes were everywhere. The memes were unstoppable. And King Harris was no longer in control of the story. What started as a defensive family turned into a full-blown public unraveling. And now the question isn't just about the arrest. It's bigger than that. Was this just a mistake? Or was it the exact opening someone like 50 Cent had been waiting for? Because if there's one thing history has shown, it's that once things reach this level, there's no easy way back. And this might just be the point where everything goes too far. He waits, he watches, and most importantly, he lets his opponents destroy themselves. That's always been the strategy of 50 Cent. While everyone else is loud, emotional, and reactive, he does the opposite. He goes quiet, observes, studies the moment, because he knows something most people don't. You don't have to swing first when your opponent is already falling apart. And that's exactly what was happening with King Harris. While King was going all in online, posting aggressively, calling out names, trying to prove a point, 50 stayed calm. Almost too calm. No long responses. No angry videos. No public back and forth. Just silence and the occasional meme. And if you understand how 50 operates, that silence isn't peace, it's pressure. It means he's waiting for the one moment that changes everything. And then it happened. Out of nowhere. A late-night police stop. A high-speed situation. And a visual so bizarre, so unexpected, that it instantly took over the internet. In a single moment, everything King Harris had been building online, his image, his confidence, his defiance, came crashing down. Because this wasn't just an arrest. This was a spectacle. And the details, they made it worse. The outfit, the attitude, the timing. It didn't feel real. It felt like something straight out of a viral headline engineered for maximum embarrassment. And before the Harris family could even react, before T.I. could step in, before any kind of damage control could begin, the internet had already seen everything. And once the internet sees something like that, it's over. Clips started spreading like wildfire. Screenshots, reposts, commentary, every platform lit up at once. People weren't just watching, they were reacting in real time. And you already know who else was watching. 50 Cent. The one person who had been waiting for King to slip. But what nobody expected was just how perfectly this moment would play into his hands. Because this wasn't just a mistake. This was the kind of moment that can define someone's image forever. And suddenly, one question started echoing across social media. Did King Harris just lose this entire war in one single night? Or was this just the beginning of something even bigger? Because what happened next didn't just escalate things. It completely changed the narrative. It all went wrong in seconds. One moment, King Harris was moving through the streets like nothing could touch him, confidence high, energy reckless, like the rules didn't apply. And then, blue lights, flashing in the rearview mirror. At first, it should have been simple, just another traffic stop, pull over, handle it, move on. But this wasn't normal. Because the second officers approached the vehicle, everything shifted. Sitting right there in plain sight was something they couldn't ignore. A weapon, not hidden, not secured, just visible. And instantly the tone changed. What started as routine became high risk. Officers issued clear commands: step out of the vehicle. Simple, direct, no confusion. But instead of complying, King hesitated, then questioned it, then refused. And just like that, the situation escalated. Think about that for a second. You're already pulled over. Police are giving direct orders. There's a visible weapon involved. This is the moment where most people de-escalate. But instead, he pushed back. And that's when everything got serious. Because officers don't take chances in situations like that. Voices got sharper, commands got louder, the tension, you could feel it building second by second. But then, it took a turn nobody saw coming. Instead of focusing on the situation, King Harris reached for his phone, right there in the middle of it all. While officers were outside, while the pressure was rising, while everything was on the edge of spiraling out of control, he started posting. According to what spread online, he uploaded a photo of himself still inside the vehicle, still in the middle of the stop, wearing a full Pikachu onesie. Let that sink in. Not just in trouble, not just being pulled over, but dressed like a cartoon character, while everything is unfolding in real time. And the caption, mocking the situation like it wasn't serious, like it was all a joke. And that moment, that exact decision, is when everything flipped. Because what could have stayed private, what could have been handled quietly, was now public. Instantly. Now it wasn't just law enforcement involved. It was the internet. And once the internet gets involved, you don't control the story anymore. The story controls you. But it didn't stop there. Even after repeated commands, King still didn't step out. Not right away. Not when things were still manageable. More hesitation. More resistance. More tension. Until officers made it clear. Step out or you will be arrested for obstruction. And still delay. At that point, the situation had already crossed a line. Eventually, after a phone call with his lawyer, he stepped out of the vehicle. But by then, too late. The moment was gone. The damage was done. Because now, what could have been a minor issue had turned into something much bigger. Handcuffs came out. Charges started stacking. And suddenly, this wasn't about speeding anymore. This was obstruction. This was possession. This was escalation. And then came the part that made everything worse. The search. Because according to what's being reported, what officers allegedly found changed the entire situation. A controlled substance. And just like that, everything leveled up. This wasn't just a viral moment anymore. This was serious. Because situations like this don't just disappear. They follow you. They reshape how people see you. And in the middle of an already public feud, it becomes ammunition. The worst kind. And somewhere, watching all of this unfold, 50 Cent didn't need to rush. Didn't need to force anything. Because the moment he was waiting for, it had just handed itself to him. Something that turns a bad night into a life-altering moment. And just like that, King Harris wasn't just trending anymore. He was in real trouble. Now think about how fast everything moved. Within minutes, screenshots of his post started circulating. Within hours, blogs picked up the story. And before the sun even came up, the entire internet was locked in. But here's the twist nobody saw coming. While everyone else was distracted by the absurdity, the outfit, the posts, the memes, someone else was watching this unfold from a completely different angle. 50 Cent. Because for him, this wasn't just funny. This was perfect. Think about the timing. Weeks of tension. Weeks of being called out publicly. Weeks of King Harris trying to position himself as someone who could go toe-to-toe with one of the most calculated figures in entertainment. And now this. A public arrest. A viral moment. A situation so unbelievable, it practically wrote its own punchline. And according to what people close to the situation were saying, the moment 50 saw it, he didn't get angry. He didn't go live. He didn't rant. He smiled. Because this wasn't just a mistake. This was ammunition. And if you understand how 50 Cent moves, you already know what that means. He doesn't rush moments like this. He doesn't waste them. He waits. And then he strikes at the exact moment it will hurt the most. But just when it seemed like the situation couldn't get worse. It did. Because people started digging. And what they found changed everything. This wasn't the first time King Harris had brushed up against trouble. There were whispers of past incidents, previous warnings, moments that could have been wake-up calls. But weren't. And now, this situation didn't look like a one-time mistake anymore. It started to look like a pattern. Something deeper. Something harder to ignore. And as more details surfaced, the tone online began to shift. At first, people were laughing. But now, they were questioning his judgment, his circle, his future, and most importantly, how far this could go. Because once a narrative changes like that, it doesn't go back. But just when it felt like things had peaked, that's when everything flipped again. Because 50 Cent finally decided to respond. And what he did next didn't just embarrass King Harris. It changed the entire conversation overnight. The moment the footage hit the internet, everything exploded. Not slowly, not gradually. Instantly. Clips of King sitting in that car, wearing the Pikachu onesie, refusing commands, posting in the middle of a police stop. They spread everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Every platform. At first, people didn't even believe it. It felt too ridiculous to be real. There was no way someone in that kind of situation would act like that. Right. But then more details came out. Body cam timestamps. Charge confirmations. Reports lining up. And just like that, the jokes turned into something heavier. Because now this wasn't just viral content. This was a full-blown public meltdown. And here's where it gets dangerous. Because the internet doesn't just watch. It reacts. And once that reaction starts, you can't stop it. Suddenly, insiders started appearing everywhere. Some claimed this wasn't spontaneous, that King had been out all night, already moving recklessly before the stop even happened. Others said people close to him had warned him to stay low, especially with everything going on publicly. But he didn't listen. And now, everything was catching up to him at once. Momentum like that doesn't slow down. It builds. And just when it felt like the situation had reached its peak, that's when he stepped in. 50 Cent. And if you thought he was going to go easy, you don't know him. Because instead of coming in loud, instead of dropping a long rant or dragging things out, he did something far more effective. He kept it simple. One post, one image, one caption. That was it. But it hit harder than anything else could have. According to what fans started sharing, the post was a meme, a perfectly crafted side-by-side. On one side, King Harris caught in chaos, the onesie, the arrest, the moment everyone was already laughing at. On the other side, calm, controlled success, the exact opposite energy. And the caption, cold, calculated, something along the lines of, see what happens when you try to play grown games too early. No yelling, no insults, no over-explaining, just precision. And that's what made it hit, because it didn't feel emotional. It felt intentional. And instantly, the internet flipped again. Because now, this wasn't just about an arrest anymore. This became about something bigger. Who just won? Who lost? Who played it right? Fans split immediately. Some defended King, said he was young, said people were overreacting, said mistakes happen. But others, they weren't holding back. They said he embarrassed himself, embarrassed his family, and worst of all, he handed 50 Cent the exact moment he had been waiting for. And that's the part that stuck. Because in situations like this, perception becomes reality. And right now, the perception wasn't in King's favor. But it didn't stop there. Because as the story kept spreading, more leaks started surfacing. Unverified messages, alleged group chats, people claiming to have inside knowledge. And the narrative got even messier. Some were saying that even within the Harris circle there was tension, frustration, concern. Because this wasn't just about public embarrassment anymore. This was about real consequences, legal consequences, career consequences, family reputation. And the deeper things went, the more cracks started to show. Because moments like this don't stay contained. They ripple outward. They affect everything. And just when it seemed like all the damage had already been done, another twist started forming. One that hinted this situation wasn't just spiraling. It was evolving into something much bigger. Something that wasn't just about one night, one mistake, or one viral moment, but something that could reshape everything moving forward. And just when it felt like the chaos had reached its peak, everything shifted again. Because while the internet was busy laughing, reposting memes, and debating sides, and while 50 Cent was quietly controlling the narrative without even trying, someone else stepped into focus. T.I. And his reaction. It wasn't what anyone expected. No statement. No post. No defense. Nothing. Complete silence. And somehow, that silence was louder than anything he could have said. Because the moment people realized he wasn't speaking, the questions started flooding in. Why isn't he defending his son? Why isn't he addressing this publicly? Is something happening behind the scenes? Is this situation worse than it looks? And just like that, the spotlight widened. This wasn't just about King Harris anymore. Now it was about the entire Harris family. Because silence like that doesn't just happen randomly, especially not from someone like T.I., who's built a reputation on speaking up, stepping in, and controlling the narrative when things get messy. So when he did, people noticed, and they started reading into it. Some said he was handling it privately. Others thought he was disappointed. And a few believed something deeper was unfolding behind the scenes, something we weren't being told yet. But just when people thought they had a handle on the situation, another detail dropped. And this one changed everything. Because according to what started circulating after being released, King Harris didn't go quiet. He didn't disappear. He didn't lay low. He didn't try to reset the narrative. He doubled down, posted again, still wearing the same Pikachu onesie, still acting like nothing had happened, like the entire situation was a joke. And that single decision, it flipped public opinion instantly. Because now, even the people who were defending him started pulling back. That moment forced a realization. This wasn't just a bad night. It wasn't just a mistake. It was starting to look like a mindset, a pattern. And that's when the conversation got serious. Because suddenly, people weren't asking what happened anymore. They were asking, what happens next? Because at this point, this wasn't just viral drama. This was real life, real consequences, real fallout, real pressure building behind the scenes. And the worst part, it wasn't over. Because beneath all the memes, the jokes, the reactions, something else was forming. Something bigger than social media. Bigger than one incident. Bigger than one viral moment. And if even a fraction of the rumors were true, then what comes next could completely reshape how this entire story is remembered. Because right now, it looks like 50 Cent is winning. It looks like King Harris is losing. It looks like the Harris family is under pressure. But stories like this, they don't end where people think they do. The biggest twist usually comes after everything falls apart. And this story, it's nowhere near finished. By the time the sun came up, the internet wasn't just reacting. It was exploding. Not just trending. Not just viral. This had turned into a full-scale digital war zone. Every platform, every timeline, every comment section, one name everywhere. King Harris. But here's the thing about the internet. It doesn't just react. It divides. And within hours, two completely different narratives started forming. On one side, supporters, people saying he's young, he made a mistake. Others claiming the situation was being exaggerated. Some even going further, suggesting the timing felt suspicious, pointing to the ongoing feud, the public nature of everything, and how quickly it all spread. To them, King Harris wasn't just wrong. He was being targeted. And the internet, too quick to tear someone down. But on the other side, there was no sympathy. None. And those voices, they spread faster than anything else, calling him reckless, immature, out of control. They weren't just criticizing what he did. They were questioning who he is. Comments flooded in. He had every advantage and still chose chaos. This is what happens when attention matters more than discipline. He wanted the spotlight, now he has it. And just like that, the narrative shifted again. From mistake to pattern. And once that shift happens, it's hard to undo. But then things escalated even further. Because now it wasn't just fans talking. Celebrities started reacting too. Not directly, not openly, but in ways that were impossible to ignore. Cryptic posts, subtle messages, indirect statements with perfect timing. One artist wrote, "Fame without guidance is the fastest way to self-destruction." Another posted, "Stop confusing attention with respect." No names, no tags, but everyone knew. And the internet did what it always does. Connected the dots. Screenshots spread. Threads popped up. Discussions exploded. And suddenly, it felt like the entire industry was watching this unfold in real time. But even with all that noise, there was still one person people kept watching. 50 Cent. Because by now, everyone knew. He had already made his move. He had already shifted the narrative. But what surprised people was what he did next. He didn't overdo it. He didn't flood social media. He stayed strategic, posting occasionally, timing everything perfectly, each post landing harder than the last. And the result? More laughs, more shares, more people siding with him. Because in the court of public opinion, timing is everything. And right now, his timing was flawless. But while he was gaining momentum, pressure was building somewhere else. The Harris family, because T.I. was still silent. No interviews, no statements, no attempts to regain control of the narrative. And that silence, it started making people uncomfortable. Because when someone known for speaking suddenly stops, it usually means one thing. Something bigger is happening behind the scenes. And fans picked up on it immediately. Is he disappointed? Is he handling this privately? Or is the situation worse than it looks? And once again, the focus shifted from the internet to the family, because now this wasn't just about one viral moment. This was about legacy, reputation, control, and then things got even messier. Because within the fan base itself, chaos, arguments everywhere, people digging up old clips, old interviews, old controversies, trying to prove this wasn't new, trying to show this moment had been building for a long time. And as those clips resurfaced, the conversation got louder, more aggressive, more divided. Some doubled down in support. Others completely turned against him. And the middle ground, it disappeared. Because that's what viral controversy does. It forces people to choose a side. But here's the most dangerous part of all this. While everyone was arguing, laughing, judging, the real situation was still unfolding. Because behind the memes, in the reactions, behind all the noise, there are real consequences coming. And those consequences, they don't care about public opinion. They don't care about who's winning online. They don't care about viral moments. They hit in real life. And when they do, that's when the story changes for real. Legal consequences, personal consequences, career consequences. And none of those disappear with a post, a meme, or a viral moment. That's when people started realizing this isn't entertainment anymore. This is real life, catching up in real time. Because up until this point, everything felt like content, something to watch, react to, laugh at, debate. But now, the tone shifted. Because behind the headlines, behind the clips, behind the chaos, there were real stakes. And even after all the backlash, all the pressure, all the division online, one question still lingered. Is this the lowest point? Or is something even worse still coming? Because if history has taught us anything about moments like this, the biggest twist usually comes last. And this one, nobody saw it coming. Just when it felt like everything had peaked, when it seemed like the internet had already decided the outcome, the real shift happened. And it didn't come from a meme. It didn't come from fans. It didn't even come from 50 Cent. It came from behind the scenes. Because while everyone was distracted by the viral clips, the Pikachu onesie, the endless jokes, there were quiet conversations happening. Serious ones. Conversations involving lawyers, advisors, people who understand exactly how fast situations like this can spiral and how hard they are to contain once they do. And according to whispers that started surfacing, this wasn't being treated like just another incident. This was being treated like a turning point, a breaking point, because for the first time, people close to King Harris were reportedly asking a question they'd been avoiding for a long time. Is this getting out of control? And that question changes everything. Because up until now, the narrative was easy to defend. Young energy, family loyalty, standing up against disrespect. But this felt different. This felt serious. This felt like consequences that don't just fade away. Because once legal teams start preparing for more than just a quick resolution, you know it's bigger than the internet. And if even part of that is true, then what King Harris is facing isn't just embarrassment. It's something that could follow him for years. But here's where it gets even more intense. Because while all of that was happening quietly behind the scenes, something else was happening publicly. And it caught everyone off guard. Because instead of stepping back, instead of going silent, instead of letting things cool down, King Harris came back online, posting again, moving like nothing had happened, acting like it didn't matter. And for a moment, people didn't know how to read it. Was this confidence? Was this denial? Or was this something deeper? Because to some, it looked like he was trying to take control of the narrative, flip the embarrassment into humor, turn the moment into something he could own. But to others, it looked reckless, like he still didn't fully understand how serious the situation had become. And that divide made everything worse, because now the conversation wasn't just about what happened. It was about what it meant. And then, everything shifted again. Because while King was posting, while fans were arguing, while the story was still dominating timelines, 50 Cent made another move. But this time, it felt different. No loud jokes, no obvious trolling, just something calculated, something subtle. A post that didn't just mock the situation. It framed it, like he was saying without saying it. This is exactly what I was warning about. And suddenly, people started connecting dots. They went back, looked at everything that led up to this moment. The tension, the warnings, the back and forth, the build-up. And for the first time, it started to feel less like bad timing and more like something inevitable. And that realization shifted the narrative one final time. Because now, this wasn't just about a viral arrest. This wasn't just about a feud. This became about direction, trajectory, a path that looked like it might be heading somewhere dangerous. And that's when people started asking the question nobody really wanted to say out loud. What happens if this doesn't stop? Because if one moment like this can explode overnight, if one decision can completely flip public opinion, then what happens if it happens again? What happens if the pattern continues? What happens if the next moment is bigger, worse, harder to recover from? And suddenly, this story didn't feel finished. It felt like the beginning. Because right now, it looks like 50 Cent is winning. It looks like King Harris took a major hit. It looks like the internet has already chosen its side. Stories like this, they don't end cleanly. They evolve. They escalate. They come back in ways nobody expects. And if the tension keeps building, if the reactions keep growing, if the pressure keeps rising, then this viral moment might not even be the biggest headline yet. Because something about this situation says it's not over. Not even close. So now the real question is, what actually just happened here? Was this just a careless mistake? A young guy caught in the moment, making one bad decision that got blown out of proportion? Or did we just witness the exact moment everything started to unravel? Because let's be real, some people believe he's being targeted. Others think this was inevitable. And then there are those who feel like something deeper is happening behind the scenes, something we haven't fully seen yet. And then there's the other question. Did 50 Cent just win this entire situation without even trying? Or is this just one round in a much bigger battle? Because if this tension continues, if things escalate further, we might be looking at something that goes way beyond social media drama. And when that happens, everything changes. So now it comes down to perspective. Was King Harris wrong? Or is the internet overreacting? Did 50 Cent take it too far? Or did he play it perfectly? And most importantly, what happens next? Because one thing is clear. This story isn't finished. And whatever comes next might be the moment that changes everything.